Joining me on the line to tell us a bit more about it is Hugh Edwards. He's the CEO of ukactive. Happy New Year, Hugh. How are you?
And Happy New Year to you as well, Jeanette. Great, thank you. I hope you had a great Christmas and New Year.
We tried. We tried with the circumstances. 2 young kids, and we were running around trying to keep active, trying to keep fit at the same time
absolutely.
to maintain the sanity in the house. But it's been all good. But this is great, Hugh. You know, I think that I've seen this hashtag before. I've heard the news story before. But tell me what's a bit different this time round.
Well, it's all you talked about in your intro brilliantly about 2021 and hope, and I think we're all feeling and holding on to the hope of that vaccine being rolled out across London and across the whole of the UK as well. But we have to look back at what was a challenging 2020 for everybody, and no more than the sport and physical activity sector, where we had a situation where obviously in the restrictions, many of the community sport, obviously people weren't able to go and watch sports, and obviously fitness and health and leisure and swimming pools are also affected as well. And what we're saying here in this campaign is, as we're going into a new year when people think incredibly much about their own health and well-being, how do we find a plan to support those people in this period between now and the vaccine? How can we make sure that there's an opportunity for people to be as active and healthy as they possibly can? Because as you'll know so well, the power of sport and physical activity is so important for the physical, mental and social well-being of all of our communities we live in.
And this is the thing, isn't it? Like, what has that impact been like? We speak about the pools. My son, every Saturday, he's only 4 or 5 now, but every Saturday he'd be in the pool, he'd be getting his lessons. He hasn't had that for the best part of a year now. And that's just at a very, very basic level. How has it impacted many people who rely on that so much?
Well, it's such a very good question. And over that last year, where there's been very positive messaging, around the importance of exercise, and when we're in that first lockdown, trying to get out for your hour a day, I think the facts are much more sobering. And there was a massive cliff edge drop in activity levels across the whole country, where you saw a real drop in the millions of people being active, both adults and children, young people as well. And that is then going to grow problems. We would have those problems going into November lockdown. We're effectively going into this third lockdown now. And so the impact has been huge on people's activity levels, and as a result has had massive impacts on their physical and mental well-being. And then that's complemented by the people who run these facilities, whether it be community sports halls, whether it be gyms, leisure centres, clubs, community clubs. They've been massively impacted with the loss of income, which keeps them going. And whilst we've got great respect for hospitality and retail, they've got other income sources there. And when you close the facilities in sport and physical activity, that means the income goes to zero. So, there is a real need to prioritise the sector if it's going to be at the heart of the nation's renewal when we start to come out of this crisis.
What does this resolution mean? Because everybody's come together now. I've had a good look at the list of organisations and governing bodies that have signed it. What does this actually entail?
Well, the resolution is asking for the government to put the sector, the sport and physical activity sector, at the heart of its priorities going into 2021. We know that sport and physical activity does so much more than just get out, get active. It's around hanging out with your mates, with your family. It's around supporting your mental health in many ways, especially in the fitness and leisure sector, which I represent. You wouldn't believe that 66% of prehab and rehab cancer treatment is done in gyms and leisure centres. So it's hugely important, essential services that we're losing here when they're closed. And we can understand, the restrictions as they're coming in with this new variant, but we've got to find a way of working with the sector to be able to support communities, because the amount of emails and messages I get, there's thousands of people who are desperate to get back to their facilities, desperate to get back into sport, desperate to get back into their fitness. And some people are going outside and running, and that's great, and all exercise is good, but for so many people, millions of people, that's not really an option. And we've got to find a way of finding a solution to get people active and healthy, because what we're going to happen here is store up another crisis around physical and mental well-being, which will be equally damaging to our nation as well.
How do you measure the balance of that, Hugh? Because just listening to what you're saying, some of the emails that you get, and people that are, very sick and actually rely on exercise to try and complement their health needs. Where is the balance with that? Where do you strike that with what the government are trying to do?
The balance has always got to be around safety first, Jeanette. And we've worked with the government, to get the facilities, community sport, gyms and leisure centres up and open again, which we did back in July. And the sector really rallied around probably some of the highest standards around safety that there possibly can be. And, when we got to the end of the year, the prevalence of COVID in our facilities is extremely low, really low, because of and that's testament to the customers, testament to people who looked after and respected the guidelines, but also to the facilities and the workforce themselves. So if there is a way, and we will continue conversation with the government this week to open up these facilities in a way which does not compromise safety, but allows people to be able to use facilities which they're desperately needing to for their own physical and mental well-being, then we've got to find a solution, because ultimately, and you put it eloquently in your intro, we can't just wait until the vaccine comes, because that could be 3 or 4 months down the line. And what an impact of 4 months of a massive drop in physical activity on the physical and mental well-being could be profound for London and for the wider country as well.
Who signed this? I've seen some names on there. I always scour down to see who hasn't signed it. That's my first thing I look at. But who's giving it the co-sign?
Yeah, it's a broad coalition. You know very well that sport and physical activity is such a broad church, right? But you've got all the major names from the national governing bodies of sport. You've got the major operators across fitness and leisure. You've got the smallest to the largest organisations signing this pledge and this call to action, this declaration. And and it's actually been brilliant to actually see a united voice for the sector. And it's united because we know how much the facilities and the programs and the clubs mean for millions across the country, and especially in London as well. And we have to fight to keep them open and get them and survive this crisis, because it would be an absolute tragedy if we came out of this and actually facilities which people depend on weren't there anymore.
And this recovery fund that has been announced, how do you know how well the organisations will be using that money, or is that something that's yet to be decided?
Yeah, there's an initial recovery fund, especially for public leisure, Jeanette. But what we need now is probably, as we're going into this new phase of the crisis, a new chapter, we need more support. We need more support looking at what the hospitality sector had with the Eat Out to Help Out campaign. It needs to have a similar programme and campaign. It needs to be greater support around rent, around business rates, especially for the facilities, because a lot of these guys are looking at zero income for another few months, and the amount of bills are going to be increasing for them, and they won't be able to reconcile that. And as a result, we can't afford to lose community facilities, the swimming pool your family uses, for example. We can't afford to lose those, because those are in the fabric of communities across the whole of London, across the whole UK as well.
And this is the thing, isn't it? That it's quite a scary prospect that some of these places might just not open again. And I dread to think the sleepless nights you've maybe had in 2021, thinking about that level, that severity of the impact on the industry, and how keen do you feel the government are to avoid situations like that?
They are, and this is a health crisis, number one, and there's a number of the problems we've faced, and we've had some tragedies here, and obviously in terms of loss of life and people who are in hospital who have been casualties of COVID. And we've got to be honest with us as a nation that one of the reasons is because of the really harsh health inequalities we have as a nation, really high levels of type 2 diabetes, problems with cardiovascular. People have been exposed because of conditions which through physical activity and wider support are avoidable. And so ultimately we need to get the nation healthy, not just for COVID but beyond, so we can actually avoid future tragedies like this and get our nation as healthy as possibly can. I think we should have an ambition to be the most healthy nation on earth, and strive to that, because it is in the undeniable benefits to our physical and mental and economic well-being as a nation.
Hugh, you know what? I'm definitely going to be following that hashtag, especially for the early part of the year. And is there anything else people can do that are listening? Is there any way to kind of lobby on social media or anything
Absolutely.
to help? What can they do?
Get in contact with your local MP, make your voice heard. If you've got clubs, football clubs, if you've got any sort of sports clubs or gyms and leisure centres which you're passionate about, get involved with your local MP. Make sure you're making your concerns known, and ask for their solutions about how we're going to protect and support our vital sector.
Brilliant stuff, Hugh. Really good talking to you. Happy New Year to you again, and let's hope that this campaign does take off and we get the result that we